Questions for reflection. Our first reading is drawn from the book of Maccabees, and it takes place at a time about 170 years before Christ, when Israel was ruled by foreign kings. One of those kings was Antiochus IV, and this king reversed a long tradition of leaving the Jewish people to live in peace. He began to persecute many of the Lord's chosen people. Out of fear of persecution or out of a desire to conform, some Israelites joined the Gentiles. There was a great falling away, as some of the chosen people of Israel, the ones whom God had chosen to reveal himself to the nations, fell into idolatry. But many remained faithful, and some remained faithful even to the point of facing death. Today, we live in a world where we are encouraged to join the increasingly secularist culture and bow to new idols. We are discouraged from sharing our faith in public. In some places, Christians are being persecuted, even to the point of death. In others, such as the West, there's a sort of soft persecution. People are losing their reputations for staying faithful to the Lord Jesus Christ and his church. Some are losing their jobs, and the hostility toward Christians is on the increase. So how do we respond in the face of these circumstances? Do we still pray for our enemies and fearlessly proclaim the gospel? For this is what love requires we do. If we love our enemies and those who persecute us, then we have a duty to warn them of danger and to proclaim the good news to them, even if it means we shall be persecuted. God will give us the grace. In today's responsorial psalm, David expresses his anger at the wicked. Wickedness is the result of a choice to do evil. At a time when so many people are offended by so many things, how about wickedness? We should all be angry and offended by evil. The evils of abortion, the persecution of Christians, the many attacks upon the church from both within and without, and the public encouragement of disorder and vice. These are wicked things, and it is right for us to be offended by them. But the psalmist also has a response. We must remember the law. We must observe the Lord's precepts and seek his will. Do this, and we will be saved from all their snares. Our gospel for today tells the story of how Jesus restored a blind man to sight because of his faith. What makes this blind man remarkable is the persistence of his faith. Even though he was admonished to keep quiet, he did not allow public pressure to stop him from seeking Christ. We are all blinded by sin. The sacrament of baptism was called the sacrament of the Enlightenment in the early church for good reason. Yet we need to keep that light of living faith alive. We do that by cultivating a lifestyle of prayer and living the faith which we profess. We're called to follow the example of this blind man whose eyes were opened. Although we are tainted by sin, we can be saved by Jesus Christ. And when the public tells us to be quiet, we should be encouraged to shout all the louder. And finally, once we've been blessed, we should go forth and thankfully proclaim the good news to others, so they too can be saved and their eyes will be opened. We're invited today to be the people who always want to see Jesus. That desire should draw us ever more deeply into a life of prayer and communion. It is there in the intimacy fueled by living faith that we receive the light we need to see the Lord. St. Augustine once warned of what can happen when we turn away from that light. And I quote, "Love for the shadows ends up making the eyes of the soul weaker and weaker. The eyes become unable to see the face of God. Therefore, the more a man gives into his weakness, the more he slips into darkness," end quote. Let's ask the Lord for the grace we need to persevere in the faith.